Hi to all. So in this video, we will have a short version of a two-stage dividend discount model, and the previous version, the long version, just gives you a very detailed perspective of how or why we're using two stages, and how exactly we are implementing this two-stage model. So let's, as we did before, let's type all of the variables we're given. D0, just this company just paid a dividend of $2, so D0 is $2. D0, whenever we're talking about time 0, that means today. Dividend that happened today was 2. And now we have the growth rate, and this growth rate is 10% for the next 3 years. So this is a super normal, and I'm going to call it super normal SN.G, and that is a 10% next 3 years. Following that, we will end up with a long-term growth rate or stable growth rate, which is the growth rate at which the dividends will continue growing after the third year and for the foreseeable future, and that's at 2% for the foreseeable future. And now, once we have this, we will also have a very important variable, which is the discount rate. And this discount rate is 5%. Okay, and so now we have all of the variables, and we need to adjust this for foreseeable future. And now we have all of these variables here. So the way to work with a two-step dividend discount model is the following. First, we cannot use the dividend discount model whenever the growth rate is higher than the discount rate. So therefore, these initial dividends, D1, D2, D3, super normal growth stage, we will we will calculate the PV manually of dividends. Okay, so let's calculate this now. So D1, what is D1? Well, we know that the company paid a dividend of $2, and then we know that these dividends are going to grow at a 10% rate for the next 3 years. So now this is D1. What is D2? Well, it's D1, and we continue to grow at a 10% rate. Now, and what is D3? Well, it's D2, and we continue to grow at a 10% rate. There we go. So now we will get the present value. And how do we get the present value? Well, each dividend divided by 1 plus the discount rate to the power of time. And let me just, I will choose this cell, but then I will change, instead of D1, I will change it to 1213. Okay, and then if we lock this discount rate here, right, we can now scroll this down. We can add all of these dividends. And now this is the price of the first three dividends. And I'm going to call this price, quote unquote. It's just the present value. Now, after dividend 4, we can start, we are at a stable growth stage. We can use the shortcut dividend discount model. So once again, I will do this. Let's remember the dividend discount model. We have P, the price at time 0, today, will be equal to dividend, D1, dividend in next year, divided by R minus G. Okay, so I like this framing it in, or presenting it in the following way. What we will do is, actually we will not be using or plugging D1. Okay, we cannot use this in starting with D1. We need to start with D4 instead. Okay, so then the formula will change a little because we will start in D4. So then this will no longer be T0, but it will be T3. So we will get the price of a stock as if we are. We will get the price of the stock as if we are in the future, 3 years from now. Okay, so we will have to, when we get that price, we will have to bring it to present value. Okay, so let's do that. P times 3, and then that will be equal to D4. Now, what is D4? Okay, and we can just open a parenthesis. D4 is just this dividend 3 multiplied by 1 plus now the long-term growth rate. If you don't want to be confused, let's just write D4 here and let's calculate it here before. So this is D3, and then we have it grow at a 2% rate multiplied by 1.02 or by 1 plus 2%. And so the dividend 4 will be 2.715. Let's remove a couple of decimals. Okay, perfect. And now let's correct this to D4. So P price at time 3 will be equal to this dividend 4 divided by R minus G, long term now. Okay, so we get that price. But that price, let's keep in mind, we are getting a price which is still in the future, so we need to discount it so we get the actual present value of that price, of that present, so we get the present value of that cash flow today. So P, T0, will be equal to this price that is actually in time 3 divided by 1 plus R to the power of 3, because this price, right, we are getting a price as if we are in time 3 years from now, so we need to bring it back, we need to bring it to present value from year 3 to today. And there we go. So now we have this present value of these dividends occurring in the stable stage, and we also have the price of the dividends that are occurring in the supernormal growth stage. Okay, so total price of the stock, supernormal plus stable. What we do is P0, we will add up the price of the supernormal dividends and the price of the stable growth dividends to the foreseeable into the foreseeable future, and this is the price of the stock right here. Okay, now what happens, and I will change this. I'll move this to the end and I will make a small copy. If you're already clear, then you can stop watching this video. That's perfectly fine. But let's make a little change in our in this question. Okay, what happens if we have dividends that will grow for the next 5 years and then 2 years thereon, right? So we will have to change this to the next 5 years, and then after the fifth year for the foreseeable future. So now this is not any difficult. What we will do is we would continue period 4, period 5, and we will continue. The dividends would continue growing at a 10%, 10, 10%, 10%, and then we would continue having those dividends grow at a 10%. And then we will continue getting the present value manually of these first uh, 5 dividends. Okay, and let me just confirm that everything is correct. So we have this, 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 and then this is growing at this. Okay, and then there is a problem here. So we need to have this dividends grow at 10%, this dividend is growing at 10%, this dividend is growing at 10%, this dividend needs to grow at a 10% too, and this dividend needs to grow at a 10% rate too. Okay, so now these dividends are growing at a 10% rate every year, and we get the present value for each of these dividends manually, and then we add up the present value of these five dividends, and we cannot use the dividend discount model in any of these dividends because we are having a supernormal growth rate that is greater than the discount rate, so we cannot use the dividend discount model. Now we have updated the supernormal dividends and the price of the dividends during the first 5 years. And now let's move on. After year five, we can then use the dividend discount model shortcut, and we no longer need to continue doing this thing manually, calculating the present value manually. But still, we cannot. So we acknowledge that the whole problem is we cannot start using the dividend discount model with D1, so we need to start with D6 instead. And once we make this adjustment, let me erase this, right? Instead of D1, we are using D6. Then the price of this stable growth dividends we will get is as if we are standing in period 5. Okay, so here we have dividend 1 and we get the price today. Here we have dividend 6, so we get the price in period 5, and this is the price or the present value. The present value is the accurate way of what we're doing of dividend 6 and all the dividends after dividend 6 for the foreseeable future. Okay, and now we will get the price of a stock as if we are in the future. This is intuitive, don't quote me on this. And then this would happen 5 years from now, PT5, right? So now we have PT5 instead of PT3. And what we're doing is now let me erase what we had before so we can work with this again. Okay, so we need D6. So what is D6? So D6 will be equal to D5, which is the last dividend that grew at the 10% rate, and then we will have D5 growing at the stable growth rate, which is the 2%, 1 plus that 2%. So D6 will no longer grow at the 10% rate, but it will be the first dividend growing at the 2% rate, just like what we saw before. And this is D6. And now that we have D6, we just use the formula here. D6 divided by R minus the long-term rate, which we can now use in the dividend discount model. But let's keep in mind this is happening 5 years from now, so we need to bring it to present value. And the way to get the present value of this price of the stable growth dividends is this price divided by 1 plus the rate to the power of 5, right? Now we got this. And now what is the total price of a stock? We just add, now let me add the same distinction here. This is the price present value of dividends 6 and thereon. Then we just add the supernormal dividends, the present value of supernormal dividends, plus the present value of stable growth dividends. And there we go. We have our price of a stock, which is different, of course, from the price we had before, because now we have a lengthier supernormal growth stage, and that is reflected in the stock price. Okay, so I would encourage you to work on the practice quiz and solve this problem until you're always getting this price correctly calculated. And if you follow the steps we have you have seen in this video, and you have seen it with supernormal growth stage of a duration of 3 years and supernormal growth stage of a duration of 5 years as well. So it should be straightforward to use it regardless of what the duration of the supernormal growth stage is. Okay, thank you for your attention. I hope this was helpful.